Let's get started. Number 10. The deadly ice cream cone. Imagine this. You're walking down the street, minding your business, enjoying a perfectly innocent ice cream cone, and suddenly, you're a criminal. Because believe it or not, there was a time when ice cream cones were banned in several US cities for a reason so dramatic it sounds like a fever dream. People were using them to hide weapons. Back in the early 1900s, some neighborhoods reported a rise in ice cream cone stabbings. Yes, that's a real sentence. Delinquents would hollow out the cone, slip in a small blade, then walk around looking like dessert-loving angels until, poke, someone got an unexpected human shish kebab. But the chaos didn't stop there. Health officials also panicked because vendors kept reusing cones, not washing, reusing. As in, someone licks the cone, doesn't finish. Vendor snaps it back onto the stack like a Lego, hands it to the next unlucky soul. If you're wondering how humanity survived the early 20th century, the answer is barely. City officials decided enough was enough. So in some areas, cones were temporarily banned, replaced by boring metal bowls that, plot twist, people also stole. It turns out that if humans want dessert, they'll commit crimes at any structural level. But here's the real kicker. After all the chaos, all the fear, all the stabbing and saliva swapping, cones came back simply because people complained that ice cream didn't feel fun anymore. The government basically said, okay, fine, but stop stabbing each other with dessert. So next time you're eating ice cream peacefully, remember, it used to be considered a high-risk activity. Number 9, the forbidden yo-yo. Picture this. Kids twirling yo-yos on the sidewalk, laughing, being adorable little agents of chaos. Cute, right? Well, not according to 1930s Britain, which decided the yo-yo was so dangerous, so apocalyptic, so cosmically cursed that it needed to be banned. Why? Because people believed yo-yos caused droughts. Yes, actual grown adults with jobs and newspapers, fully convinced that a toy on a string was disrupting the weather like some budget version of Thor. During a particularly nasty dry season, rumors started spreading that kids spinning yo-yos were pulling moisture out of the air. Some newspapers even printed warnings that yo-yos were summoning evil winds. It's unclear why everyone collectively forgot how weather works, but honestly, human history is full of moments where we all failed science at the same time. Police actually confiscated yo-yos from children. Imagine being a kid, not allowed to play outside because your toy might offend the rain gods. Meanwhile, adults continued lighting bonfires, hosting parades, and doing things that actually create chaos. But the panic spread. Teachers banned yo-yos in schools, stores removed them from shelves. A few unlucky kids were even scolded in public for inviting drought spirits. Meanwhile, meteorologists, the few sane people in the room, tried to explain droughts have many causes: climate patterns, wind circulation, atmospheric pressure, absolutely zero relation to spinning toys. But once a rumor goes viral in the 1930s, it's game over. The yo-yo was cast out of society like it burned down an orphanage. The ban only faded when it rained again, and people suddenly remembered, oh right, water falls from the sky sometimes. My bad. So, if you ever feel embarrassed about a mistake, just relax. At least you never banned a children's toy because you thought it bullied clouds. Number 8. The terrifying Slinky panic. Imagine waking up one morning, stretching, yawning, and discovering that the most dangerous item in the country is a metal spring that walks downstairs. Yes, the Slinky, that adorable, innocent, slightly useless toy, was once banned in several towns during the Cold War because people feared it could be used as a secret Soviet communication device. Not a bomb, not a weapon, a communication device. Apparently, someone in a very official-looking room decided that if you stretched a Slinky between two buildings, it could transmit vibrations that spies might use to send coded messages. Which, okay, technically is physics, but so is the fact that you can whisper through a paper towel roll, yet no one banned Bounty. But the paranoia didn't stop there. Officials feared kids were using Slinkies to tap into private phone lines. Imagine an 8-year-old in 1953. Mom, can I play outside? No, honey, the government thinks your toy might collapse the nation. Parents were told to confiscate Slinkies immediately and report unusual stretching activity. As if the only normal way to use a spring toy isn't stretching it. The best part? No one, not a single official, could demonstrate how this spy trick actually worked. Not once. Not ever. They just collectively agreed to be scared anyway, because Cold War energy was basically, if it moves, it's suspicious. If it doesn't move, it's even more suspicious. Stores pulled Slinkies off shelves. Teachers banned them in schools. Kids hid them under beds like contraband chocolate. Eventually, when the panic faded and someone with a functioning prefrontal cortex pointed out that if the Soviets wanted to spy, they'd probably just use real spy tools, the bands quietly disappeared. Today, Slinkies are back to doing what they do best: walking downstairs, getting tangled forever, and disappearing the moment you need one. But once upon a time, they were considered a national threat. Number 7. The deadly potato crisis. And imagine peeling a potato and accidentally committing a national offense. That's basically what happened in 18th century France, where potatoes were banned for being poisonous. Not slightly risky, not maybe unhealthy, straight up poisonous. People believed potatoes caused leprosy, the terrifying misunderstood disease of the era. Why? Because potatoes looked ugly, grew underground, and had a vaguely suspicious vibe, apparently enough evidence to start a countrywide panic. Doctors at the time inspected potatoes and said, these look diseased. Instead of using science, they relied on vibes. And the vibes? Terrible. So, potatoes were outlawed in some regions. Farmers were forbidden from planting them. Carts carrying potatoes were stopped and searched. It was like the war on drugs, except the drugs were French fries waiting to happen. The irony? France was going through repeated crop failures. People were starving. And the food that could have saved them, cheap, nutritious, easy to store, was sitting in the absolutely not category because someone decided this route feels cursed. Meanwhile, wealthy travelers who'd been to Germany and Ireland knew potatoes were safe. They ate them privately, like they were black market truffles. A Paris noblewoman wrote in her diary that potatoes were delicious but socially dangerous. Imagine craving mashed potatoes the way people now crave NFTs, secretly and with shame. Then came Antoine Augustin Parmentier, a pharmacist and absolute potato fanboy. After being a prisoner of war and surviving on potatoes, he returned home like, guys, they're not poison, they're just slightly unattractive. He spent years running potato propaganda, public banquets, potato recipe contests, even persuading the king to wear a potato flower. This man risked everything to save carbs. Eventually, the ban faded. People realized potatoes didn't cause leprosy, and French cuisine exploded into a golden age of fries, gratins, and whatever culinary wizardry they do over there. So next time you eat a fry, remember, you're enjoying something once considered more dangerous than medieval plagues. Number 6. The horrifying harmonica outbreak. Imagine someone pulling out a harmonica, and instead of thinking, cool, you think, oh no, this is how civilization ends. Welcome to 1890s America, where the harmonica was banned in multiple schools and towns because people believed it spread deadly lung infections. Not mildly, not maybe. People thought harmonicas were basically portable disease cannons. The logic went something like this. Someone blows into a harmonica, their breath goes inside, germs stay trapped, the next person plays, boom, instant tuberculosis. It's like the early version of sharing a vape, except with 50% more panic and 100% worse music. Doctors at the time had figured out that germs exist, yay, but not quite how they work, oh no. So anything involving breath was treated like a biohazard. Instruments like flutes, clarinets, and especially harmonicas, even though kids rarely shared them, were seen as the respiratory equivalent of tossing grenades into your immune system. Some towns went a step further and banned harmonicas for a completely different reason. They were too wild. Apparently, harmonica music was associated with unruly youth, gambling scenes, saloons, questionable dancing, and the type of people who say, trust me, right before making bad decisions. Officials believed harmonicas encouraged delinquency. Imagine a police officer marching up to a kid like, drop the harmonica, step away, hands where I can see 'em. Newspapers printed bizarre editorials claiming harmonicas could weaken moral discipline or attract criminals. How? Unclear. But it sounded scary enough for people to nod. Eventually, scientific understanding improved, society calmed down, and everyone realized, turns out the instrument that goes wee-hoo-wee when you blow into it is not a deadly weapon after all. Today, harmonicas just annoy roommates, terrify cats, and make travelers feel philosophical on trains. But once upon a time, they were feared like mini plague machines. Number 5. The evil umbrella rebellion. Imagine walking down the street with your umbrella, and suddenly the police stop you, not because you're doing anything illegal, but because your umbrella exists. Welcome to Victorian England, where carrying an umbrella was banned in certain towns and districts for reasons that sound like a sitcom written during a thunderstorm. The problem? Umbrellas were considered weapons of social disruption. Back then, rain wasn't just weather, it was an economic system. Coach drivers made serious money transporting people who wanted to stay dry. If umbrellas became normal, customers would vanish, and entire groups of drivers would go broke. So, what did they do? They lobbied to ban umbrellas. They claimed umbrellas were unsafe, morally questionable, disturbing to horses, and offensive to the dignity of the upper class. One newspaper even printed a warning that umbrellas might confuse birds, which is probably the most British excuse ever invented. But here's where it gets spicy. When a man named Jonas Hanway started walking around London with an umbrella, openly, proudly, like a rainproof rebel, coach drivers declared war on him. They threw mud at him. They yelled at him. Some even tried to run him off the street with their carriages, all because he wanted to stay dry. For years, umbrellas were banned or harassed out of use in various places. Anyone carrying one was seen as a troublemaker, challenging the social hierarchy. Imagine being arrested because your rain protection is too modern. Eventually, the bans melted away as more people realized umbrellas were, in fact, extremely convenient and did not cause horses to have emotional breakdowns. But the fear was real. For a moment in history, umbrellas were considered a threat to public order, stable employment, and equine mental health. So next time it rains, remember, you're holding an object once labeled socially dangerous. Basically, the Victorian version of causing chaos. Number 4. The scary teddy bear ban. Imagine giving a kid a teddy bear and the government stepping in like, put the bear down. That's exactly what happened in early 1900s Germany, where teddy bears were banned because officials believed they were a threat to national strength. It sounds ridiculous until you learn the context. The country was obsessed with military masculinity at the time. Leaders believed boys needed to grow up tough, stoic, and ready for battle. And nothing, absolutely nothing, threatened that fantasy more than a soft, cuddly stuffed bear. Officials feared teddy bears would make boys weak, gentle, overly emotional, less interested in war, more interested in naps, honestly relatable. One newspaper even called teddy bears tools of moral decay. Schools banned them from classrooms. Parents were pressured not to let their sons play with anything considered too soft. But the paranoia didn't stop there. Another rumor spread, claiming teddy bears carried dangerous dust, germs, and lice. Because apparently, the public didn't understand that the real source of germs was people not bathing, not stuffed animals. Inspectors were sent to toy shops to make sure foreign bears weren't being smuggled in. A few unlucky children had their bears confiscated in public. Imagine being 6 years old, watching your teddy get arrested for weakening national character. Then came the ultimate comedy moment. A group of strict officials demanded that if toy bears must exist, they should at least look more masculine. That's how we got early toys with angry eyebrows, rigid postures, tiny wooden weapons, and facial expressions that said, "Pay your taxes." But here's the twist. Kids ignored the rules, parents quietly kept buying bears, and shopkeepers learned to sell them discreetly. It was the black market, but for plush animals. The ban slowly crumbled as people realized that hugging a stuffed bear probably wasn't going to collapse the military. Today, teddy bears are symbols of comfort, healing, and childhood innocence. But once upon a time, they were the alleged enemy of masculinity and national survival. Number 3. The devilish mirror. Outrage. Picture this. You glance at a mirror to fix your hair, and suddenly you've committed a moral offense. Because in 17th century Europe, mirrors were banned in several towns and religious communities for being portals of sin. Yes, sin portals. People believed mirrors caused vanity, pride, demonic temptation, spiritual corruption, and excessive self-admiration, a crime in some places apparently. The paranoia came from a mix of superstition, terrible science, and clergy members terrified that people, especially women, might start caring about their looks more than religious obedience. But the real chaos started when rumors claimed that demons could watch you through mirrors. Basically, early surveillance anxiety, but with more horns and fire. Some preachers warned that staring into a mirror too long invited evil spirits to enter through the glass. Others believed mirrors reflected not just your face, but your soul, and looking too often could fracture it. Someone even wrote that mirrors awakened lust, which honestly says more about the writer than the mirror. In certain communities, women were forbidden from owning mirrors. Mirrors were covered during storms. Mirrors were smashed during funerals. And children were taught that mirror demons waited for misbehaving kids. Imagine trying to explain that to a 7-year-old. No bedtime story tonight, just remember, behave or the mirror gets you. Then came the moral panic twist. Some officials believed mirrors encouraged witchcraft because witches allegedly used mirrors to predict the future, curse enemies, summon spirits, or scandalously check their eyeliner, so bans spread. Some towns allowed only small, warped mirrors. Others banned them outright. People walked around half-groomed and paranoid, bumping into things and blaming misaligned spiritual auras. Eventually, as science moved forward and demons refused to appear for interviews, the bans faded away. Mirrors became normal again. People remembered they were shiny objects, not demonic webcams. But, for a moment in history, looking at your own reflection was treated like an act of rebellion. Number 2, the cursed red lipstick scare. Imagine walking into a store, picking up a tube of red lipstick, and instantly being labeled a witch, a criminal, or a walking moral disaster. Because in 16th to 18th century Europe, red lipstick was banned in multiple regions for being evil, dangerous, and capable of seducing men against their will. Not sure who they thought these men were, but apparently they were very fragile. The fear came from a chaotic mix of superstition, misogyny, and people who didn't understand cosmetics but thought magic sounded like a solid explanation. Religious leaders claimed red lipstick was the mark of the devil, while lawmakers said it was a tool used by women to trick men into marriage, which was considered actual fraud. How wild did it get? Women were accused of witchcraft simply for wearing bright lipstick. If a man claimed he was deceived by a woman's beauty, she could be prosecuted. One court ruling literally declared lipstick the devil's paint. Imagine going to trial because your makeup was too good. Rumors spread that lipstick could control a man's mind, hex rivals, curse husbands, summon demons, or inflame lust beyond mortal capacity. Their words, not mine. Basically, lipstick was the original superpower item, except nobody liked the idea of women having power. But the panic didn't stop there. Bright lipstick also became linked to rebellion, sexual independence, political resistance. So governments doubled down. Women caught wearing it were fined, shamed, or forced to wipe it off in front of officials. Some churches banned it entirely, declaring it a stain on God's intention. Then something hilarious happened. Royal women started wearing red lipstick. Suddenly the ban became negotiable. Turns out when queens use it, it's fashion. When normal women use it, it's witchcraft. By the late 1700s, attitudes softened, science progressed, and everyone realized lipstick was just pigment, not Satan's USB cable. Today, red lipstick is a symbol of confidence, glamour, and self-expression. But once upon a time, it was considered a crime, a spell, and a threat to the entire social order. Number 1, the outlawed coffee panic. Imagine sitting peacefully with your morning coffee, and suddenly the police burst in like, drop the cup, step away from the beverage. Because in 1600s Europe and the Middle East, coffee was banned multiple times for being dangerous, rebellious, and, my personal favorite, a threat to civilization. Why? Because coffee made people talk too much. Governments and religious leaders noticed that when people drank coffee, they suddenly became awake, opinionated, socially active, and disturbingly good at questioning authority. Coffee houses exploded in popularity. People gathered to debate politics, economics, philosophy, and, horror of horrors, the government itself. Authorities freaked out, calling these cafes schools of sedition. So, bans began. In Mecca, rulers feared coffee encouraged radical thinking and outlawed it. In Constantinople, sultans executed people for running secret coffee shops. In England, King Charles II tried to shut down all coffee houses because they were breeding grounds for dangerous ideas. Imagine outlawing caffeine because it made citizens too woke, literally. But the panic didn't stop at politics. Other rumors claimed coffee caused infertility, damaged the stomach, made women too bold, made men too excited, attracted demons, or turned people into unruly night creatures. One preacher even said coffee stirs up rebellion in the blood, which honestly sounds like a pretty accurate Starbucks review. There were raids on cafes, spies sent to observe coffee meetings. In England, angry women protested with a petition, claiming coffee made men useless and impotent. The 1600s were chaotic. No further explanation. But people refused to give up their caffeine. Secret coffee stations popped up everywhere. Underground cafes became social hotspots. Coffee drinkers acted like rebels hiding contraband beans instead of weapons. Eventually, rulers realized coffee wasn't destroying society, just making people mildly annoying and slightly more informed. Bans were lifted. Cafes flourished. Humanity powered straight into the Enlightenment, probably on 3 to 5 cups a day. Today, coffee is a global comfort ritual, but once upon a time, it was considered an intellectual weapon capable of overthrowing governments. That's it for today. I'll be doing similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.